Well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody joining here on a very short holiday week. I think a lot of people are out tomorrow traveling to friends and family and all that fun stuff. But we'd like to touch on the data center space, and we'd like to really go through, and you're going to see a theme happening here. So before I let Mike introduce himself, I just want to talk about the plan for December in and around cloud, and then also going into Q1 and 2026 overall. So my goal here in stepping into my new role is to double the data center business that we do here at Telarus. And in order to do that, we need the right people in the right places. And one of those key people is Mike Kowalski. And many of you know his expertise in and around cloud, but he has a very, very strong background in the data center space. So he, from a SA standpoint, a solution architect standpoint, will be heading up our data center practice moving into 2026 here. So we're happy to have him join us today and go into some of the thoughts and concerns and other things happening in the data center space that really make it a intriguing and profitable place to begin to develop some business here. So with that, Mike, why don't you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks, John. Mike Kowalski, solution architect for data center and cloud. People always kind of think that might be an interesting mix, and I like to explain to them that, the cloud is out there living in a very big data center. It's just that you don't have to see it, manage it, touch it, feel it, but all of that is physical infrastructure. So me representing both the data center side as well as the cloud side allows me to have that insight to really where is that line of delineation and where does it make sense to put things in the cloud and where does it make sense to put things in data center. And it's different for every client that we talk to. It's different for every TA that we work with based on their experience. And so I love this topic. I'm very happy to be here today. I think we have a couple of good talking points. We have no special guests other than ourselves. And really, how do we double the data center business? We get people more comfortable with selling data center. So
Exactly.
please light up the chat with questions. We're just going to have a fireside chat here. Chad, let's kick it off.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is really what's on the top of everyone's mind because we don't stop talking about it is AI. And AI has had a dramatic impact on the data center, filling a lot of existing data center space and talking about how we're going to build more data center space. All of those things have had a dramatic impact. What do you see happening right now, and at least for the next maybe 2 or 3 years in the data center space in and around AI?
Well, I like all opportunities equally. And I think with the new AI workloads that are coming out and these magnificently large, huge deals that say we are taking down megawatts of space and power, those are amazing. And those are things that we have been training all of these years to take on. And I think with AI, it might be a smaller subset of these really large opportunities. Really, to take down even a megawatt of power, you need to have an incredible amount of equipment. So when you're talking 2, 3, 4, 20, 40, 60, we have 100 megawatt opportunities in the pipeline now. These are really kind of like the early days of the internet. People are just making a mad dash to find the next best thing, and they're building it and they're deploying it. So I would never want to discard anybody from saying, don't chase this business. It's real business. It's out there. It is, as we'll learn through this conversation, getting a little bit harder to just instantly place, but we'll go through some strategies that we have on how to accomplish that when you do find these whales of deals. But AI is the conversation that everybody has to have on the top of their mind. Everybody has to have a strategy on how to deal with the question, what are you doing for AI? And again, data center is no different. You don't
Yeah, I
necessarily need to start a business and take down 100 megawatts. We're just as happy with the 10 kilowatts, the
yes.
100 kilowatts, right? They
Yep.
all fit in there someplace.
Yeah, and I think that touches on where we're going to go next. But I want to answer a question from Joseph in the chat here. Joseph, you're jumping the gun a little bit. We were going to touch on this towards the end, but I'll address it now. Why don't we put together available power and breakdown of data centers availability on a national scale. Well, we are doing that, and we are in the midst of developing a tool that should roll out here, hopefully by the end of the year. Will be a part of Telarus Hub that we all of our data center suppliers are contributing usually twice a month, but at least once a month on what power availability and space availability they have here in specifically North America is where we're starting. So the US and Canada, and they're contributing that. And we have a tool that will be able to search that. So if you have a need in the greater Dallas area for specific power request or specific space request, you can put it in there. You can see what availability is there on your own type of search. What will happen though is that to verify that availability is there, it will kick it back to us here at Telarus, and the sales engineering team will be able to verify that for you. So a little bit ahead of the game for the chat line here. So we'll bring it back and be able to talk about a couple of things that you just mentioned, which is one of the key things that I see happening out there, outside of this explosive growth, is you mentioned it right at the end, the 10 kilowatt deals, the 100 kilowatt deals, the 50 kilowatt deals. That mid-market space is growing tremendously. And I think there's a couple of drivers that are really pushing that forward, but there's a plenty of space for the traditional colo sale. And in my experience, and Mike, you can agree with or disagree with this, but in my experience, selling a couple of 20 to 50 kilowatt deals helps the partners get paid more than if they would in a multi-megawatt deal. Can you explain the difference, what happens when we jump to multi-megawatt versus the traditional colo space of that 10 to 100 kilowatts and maybe 500 kilowatts?
Yeah, the threshold right there is at 500 kilowatts for most providers, not for all of them, but for most. And what they consider that at that point is wholesale. And wholesale is one of these things where you can buy in bulk and you can get a discount, but as a TA, you're not going to get paid as much. I wrote a presentation internally for our engineering team, as you know, and I said, why is the data center bad business for the channel? And it's kind of a play on words because it is not bad business. It's an amazing business. It is, there are stories and maybe some folks on this call that sold a cabinet 15 years ago that they're still getting paid on it. Just one cabinet. Now just imagine if it was $1,500 or $2,000 and they're getting a check every single month for 150 bucks, 200 bucks, 300 bucks for 15 years. That is a good business to be in. So imagine selling two or three or four or five. And don't hold me to these rates. I'm an engineer. I'm not in finance. But sometimes those rates drop to 2% or 4% of the MRR. Now versus 13, 14, 15% if it's not a wholesale deal. So if you do the math and you sell a 200,000 kilowatt deal or 200 kilowatt deal, you're looking at commissions within the thousands of dollars per month. If you sold a 2 megawatt deal, it might be really close to about the same. So again, you don't want to shy away from those deals, but they are certainly very lucrative to be in that 500 kilowatt and less range.
Yeah, and what I see also is again just the availability. We're years out from a lot of the multi-megawatt availability that's being built and potentially hasn't even broken ground yet. They're just talking about space and where the grids can be boosted up to be able to support that type of power. So the traditional sale is there. It's ready, and we want to encourage the partners that are a part of this call today and all the rest of them in the Telarus portfolio to start looking for opportunities. And one of those opportunities that I see is the VMware conversation and how VMware is impacting this, because the traditional I've got a few servers in my office in a closet somewhere. My joke is always it's next to a water heater, inevitably, for whatever reason. But moving that into a colo space and working with some of our suppliers to be able to either move it into their cloud, move it into their colo, and avoid a lot of those pitfalls that Broadcom keeps throwing out there. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yes, what we're really starting to see is we're getting ready to get ready. And like an AI strategy, you have to have a Broadcom strategy. And that conversation started 12, 18 months ago. Well, now those contracts are coming due and these conversations that we've continually had, now they're actually putting action behind it. And the action behind it is we we like to own and manage our own equipment, but it makes sense to move some of that equipment into a private cloud, not necessarily a hyperscaler, but move it into a private cloud so that we can then tie our workloads together. And that removes a lot of the burden for the licensing, the purchasing of new hardware, and things of that nature. And what happens is they're still maintaining a core piece of infrastructure that they absolutely need to have and manage themselves. So that's really where the hybrid cloud piece comes into it. In some instances, we're having suppliers move into the data center where they're located. They're taking over the tenant of their data center. They're taking over all the power requirements, and they're building this out bespoke. So it's almost like they haven't really lost anything, except for they've moved to more of a service.
Yeah.
And that data center is a key component of that because, again, one cabinet, two cabinet, five cabinets, easy business to place. 1,000 cabinets, very difficult. But also, if you're in 100 cabinets and you want to move to the cloud, it's a very expensive endeavor. It's a lot of migration involvement in that. There's a lot of stress that the workloads will continue to work as needed. So some are actually staying with Broadcom and paying that higher price. But that means that also they're staying in their colo. So there's really no loss here with this. It's a great conversation starter. And to walk through the different options that they have, maybe at the end of the day, they just get it out next to the hot water heater and they put it into a qualified facility
Yes.
and they go from there. And I'd like to
Yep.
address one of the questions that Glenn just asked is, we've been in the data center space for a really long time now. So if you go back 10 years, and you wanted a cheap data center, you're going to go look at a carrier grade type of location. And Lumen is very famous for starting off, and they just built data centers, and they had all of just downtown LA has an AT&T facility. There are no windows, but it's carrier grade. There's no security. There's some cooling. There's some redundancy, but it's not where you want to take your business prospects to show them cool, flashy lights. It is a secure building. It's inexpensive, but it was built inexpensive before the Uptime Institute was giving these ranking systems. So
Yeah.
really back then, if you wanted low cost, you went into a carrier hotel. Now what we're in, or excuse me, a carrier grade facility. Carrier hotels is something different, but they have now built these facilities so well and so good that a typical data center could support 18 to 30 kilowatts on the floor with cold aisle, hot aisle containment. Now the next generation is we're going to get 100 kilowatts per cabinet, 125, 200. We had a conversation that a megawatt is on the table per cabinet. Now these require a lot of new sophisticated technologies. They need the cooling to be built into the facility. They need all of these things. So really what I think is that the carrier grade is out. Everything else is going to be minimum of tier 3, which is absolutely great for 99% of the workloads. And then that next generation data center is going to be that multiple 100 kilowatt and greater facilities. They don't really exist yet today. This is just as they plan. This is what they're going to have to support. It's going to be huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some things, we're going to continue obviously this discussion here today, but also into the Q1 of next year too. Some of the cool things talking about that and looking into the future of where this all goes is, I'd like to touch on the Stargate project, some other things where it goes from traditional data center space here on Earth and moving it out to the atmosphere because power is readily available. Cooling is not an issue. That's all been resolved. And in 2026, we should have some data center space based on what Elon Musk is pushing. We should have some of that up there. So
they're talking gigawatts now. They're talking about gigawatt capable facilities,
yep.
whereas up until a few years ago, if you had 300 megawatts, you were one of the largest in the world, if not the largest in the world. And now that is just getting blown out of the water.
Yeah.
I would like to requalify something that you said a little bit earlier.
Sure.
We are coming up with some great tools. We have it in beta internally right now. We use it all the time. We're continually updating it. Not ready for prime time till next year. But the reason why we asked to continue to qualify the power with us is we had a facility come online and they made available 34 megawatts, and they have pre-sold 32 of it.
Yeah.
So just because it comes up in the tool on a Tuesday doesn't mean it's going to be there on a Wednesday. And I think that's going to be part of the strategy conversation that we have today is how do we secure this space? Space is easy. How do we secure the power so that my customer can move in and start taking advantage of some of these new facilities coming online?
Yeah, and Vin just mentioned here too, the mini nuclear reactors are something that it's still a ways away, but in looking at what they're utilizing to power that, it eliminates the risk of meltdowns and all of that in these small nuclear reactors. SNR is the buzz term for that. So
Yes,
all of that
it's a
type
real
of thing
thing.
is cool to look at and fun to talk about, and I think we'll include that in later hit series calls, but. Going back to the chat, what I'd like to look at here is, one of the key things is data centers being in compliance and certified, West, Midwest, and East locations. One of the key things for the data centers that we bring to the table is that certification process. Mike, can you kind of go through a breakdown like tier one, tier two, tier three, what that means and how that helps in our partners assessing?
Yeah, yeah. So certainly when we bring a supplier on board and they offer data center services, they have a rigorous qualification just to be on our portfolio sheet. And so we take care of a lot of this heavy lifting for you. Sometimes we'll get a call and say, "Hey, do you support such and such?" And we just that they're not part of the portfolio. It's maybe because we haven't gotten to them yet, because there hasn't been enough demand, location, whatever that may be. But more than likely, they're just not up to standards as far as how modern data centers are built and maintained. This is a guideline that was really established by the Uptime Institute. Anything worth taking a look at would be tier three. Tier one would be the hot water heater. Tier two
Yeah.
would be the carrier grade. Tier three would mean natural redundancies within the infrastructure as far as cooling, as far as the water is concerned. The facility would have to have certain build qualifications. Now, let me also say that certifying each facility costs about $250,000. So more common than not is they follow the tier three guidelines for construction, but then they may not actually get it certified. Then it goes tier four, and then it goes tier four plus platinum, elite, whatever. It's a range that um, a data center out in Las Vegas, to remain nameless, great data center, but they have a very small footprint. They invest a ton of money into it, but they can afford to put these certifications around them because they have maybe 8 locations. If you
Yeah.
take other players in the space that have 200 plus or 100 or even 50, gets to be a very expensive endeavor. So we'll go through and qualify, make sure it's a minimum tier three, and then go from there so that they know that they're getting into a quality location.
Yeah. I see a lot of questions in the chat asking about some discovery questions, and we will gladly provide those to everybody that's joined today, and we'll have them out on Telarus Hub as well. We're not going to go through those today because frankly, I don't have them all finished yet. And from the other side of that, we want to make sure that it's tailored to the people that you're talking to. So the enterprise conversation, as Mike has been speaking to, is way different than the SMB and mid-market conversation of a half a rack, a quarter of a rack, a third, one third cabinet, that type of thing. So we'll break down some of the key factors in what to look for and some of those key questions, and we'll have that out for you as well. So I think one of those things that we really see time and time again is I wanted to touch on this is the cloud repatriation. Easy for me to
Yes.
say.
Yeah, right.
So all of that, and again, it was mentioned in the chat too, from a cost perspective, a lot of businesses jump to full hyperscaler cloud, specifically in and around COVID, post-COVID, of, hey, I'm going to jump into Azure. It's easier. I'm already subscribing to Microsoft 365 for all of my employees. Let me just throw everything up in Azure. And then all of a sudden, the costs just grow and grow and grow. Whereas if they were to bring some of the key applications back and leverage data center or colo space and host those on a local, semi-local, in a hybrid model where Microsoft 365 still exists for all of your day-to-day usage, your OneDrive, all those things, but the key applications that you're utilizing are local and run better, run faster, etc.
Yep.
Can you talk to that a little bit and see and explain what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I love the name repatriation because it makes me feel like we're coming back to America and we're going to make this ours again, and it's going to be fantastic. And it took me a minute to learn how to say that as well. Um, I think just for the basics of it, and this is probably no surprise to anybody, but when one of your clients wants to go all in with Azure and AWS, we'll support that. If we're a part of that process and it is the best method forward and platform forward, we'll support it. Do you get paid well for that? You don't really get paid for the infrastructure piece, which may be the largest dollar amount of that opportunity, but you will get some commissions based on the level of support, different features such as network, possibly network connections, security, so on and so forth. But repatriation is amazing because it's, hey, we did all in with the hyperscalers, and damn, it got expensive. And the governance is not there, and the sprawl is just incredible. We need to get a little bit better control over this. Well, that's fantastic because we can provide the data center space. You can sell capital hardware through some of our suppliers. You can sell dedicated private cloud as a service through our suppliers. We can take a look at that environment and say, look, you have 80% of this workload is stable. We should move it into a fixed infrastructure where you could have cost constraints, governance, all of those things that you get when it's under your roof. And you can, if it costs $1 day one and you use it all the time, it'll cost $1 day two, and so on and so forth. You don't use it, it still costs $1. So you have to really make sure that you're using it well.
Right.
You don't get that with hyperscalers. I was going through an opportunity and their budget was $40,000 a month. And we built a solution that was right at 37. It was fitting well. But I asked the question, this doesn't include any egress fees. How much are you going to use it? And that blew it out of the water. They're like, we're going to use it a lot. We have a lot of customers that are going to depend on this. That put the bill up another 50%, pushed it way past. So we had to look at some repatriation to get that into some fixed infrastructure that they could then have better control, cost control over, and it did the same thing. Now they're still pushing workloads as needed into hyperscalers, but that's the beauty of it these days. You can do it transparently. There's all sorts of options available, and we can have that conversation with the client to make them feel comfortable about moving in that direction.
Yeah, and one of the key things I think that we see in that that hybrid cloud model is exactly that. Like those egress fees are something that's a lot of times not considered, and it's brought a lot of expense to these smaller. Again, I'm focused on the SMB and that mid-market space that can push those projects, just as you said, way out of budget and way out of line.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is happening here, and we brushed against it in the beginning of the conversation here, though, is the projects specifically that are happening for new data centers in and around the US, but specifically in the Pacific Northwest. I know you have some good knowledge about what's going on there and what's happening. And can you tell us pros and cons of what's happening, maybe some of the struggles that are happening?
Yeah, so I'm in the West, so I'm a little bit tighter with the market. And I hear things. I talk to my partners all the time. I had some great news. One of our data center suppliers currently in the portfolio is bringing 50 megawatts online middle of next year. That's great. I can sell that because we have a line of people looking for big power deployments. The bad news is they won't sell it to just one client. So if you're looking for 20, 30, 40 megawatts, they're not going to do that. It would really upset their sales team for one. And two, it's a big gamble to sell that all to one client. Well, bad news, Silicon Valley Power doesn't have the ability to turn the lights on. So the building, 400,000 square feet, by the way, there's two of these, two different suppliers, but the story is the same. They have not received a green light to electrify the building yet because the grid just won't support it. We're seeing building moratoriums in Pacific Northwest because their waiting time is 2 to 5 years for new power. Now, if you got grandfathered in and the building is going up, that's fantastic, but they may find themselves in the same position where they have the building complete and they can't get occupancy because they can't turn the lights on. So those are things that we're keeping an eye on. Now, how do we find some of these bigger patches of power? We continually are qualifying new suppliers to come into the portfolio. And with that, I have empty data centers that are 12 months from tenants. You sign today, you could get 60 megawatts in 12 months and you can
Yep.
take it all. They want to sell these. They're shells currently, but we run into these more times than not because we have a great networking team. Brinton has really done a fantastic job of partnering with our TAs where they're saying, we just bought 50 acres of land in nowhere, Kentucky, and we're building a data center. Well, we can provide the network services for that through our TAs, but then we're also thinking, can we get on board with this project? Because you're literally at the point where the shovel is going into the dirt. What's the capacity going to look like? How are they going to build this out with focus on AI? So we always get the inside track to where some of these facilities are, and we are pre-selling some of them before they even get the walls up. So if you have those big deals, don't shy away from them. But if you're looking to place deals, at least in the West Coast, we have to be very prescriptive on how we attack that, where we place it, and the lead time to move in. We need to be realistic. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be a little while.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing from that aspect of things, from a grid perspective or a power perspective, is really kind of the Rocky Mountains East is where a lot of this is happening, where they can get this stuff built. The grid is stable enough to be able to do a multi-megawatt installation. A lot of them are either in the South, like in Texas, they keep building them nonstop down there. Texas, as we all know, has their own grid, not necessarily completely connected to the rest of the national grid. And then up in and around the Great Lakes, we see a lot of them too, from a cooling perspective, a water perspective up there, that we see a lot kind of breaking ground. I think as we begin to bring this home here over the next couple of minutes, Mike, what I'd like to touch on, a bunch of people were asking as far as information on really how to open the door. What are some key questions from that SMB mid market? What are some key questions to talk to the owners of those companies? Most of them don't have usually a large IT team, if any at all, and they're trying to figure out what to do as they're looking towards, and they just keep getting bombarded by AI and all the
Yeah.
other things.
I'm glad we're ending on this
Yeah.
question because I think it's really important that you don't go out there and try to sell colocation. Don't go out there and try to sell data center. Don't go out there and try to sell desktop as a service. That is too narrow-minded of an approach so that it's easy to get a no. What you want to talk to people about is how is your cloud and data center strategy working for you today? Because then you're going to get a response. And if that response is our cloud bill keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then we think let's move them into a fixed infrastructure solution that could include data center, could include dedicated private cloud, could include X, Y, and Z. So have a strategy of just the conversational awareness of how is your current environment treating you? How do you have a good control over the cost of your environment? Is your environment able to scale with the business? Is your environment too big for the business and you overpurchased, right? If you can have a strategy around how is the current infrastructure and their spend or their support, right? You can pick a topic, you can pick all the topics, but make it open-ended and start talking about that strategy. I say the same thing with AI. We're not going to solve the AI problems overnight, but let's have a conversation about what their strategy would sound like if they had a stakeholder come over and ask you, they're standing at your desk, what's our AI strategy? Let's get one in place. What is our data center and cloud strategy? Let's get one in place. Let's talk about it because this is going to take months to establish, months to execute on. So we should start sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think that's key is the planning aspect of things. And that's why we're talking about this now in December, because the goal is to continue this discussion. And I just saw Jeff's comment here. The goal is to continue this discussion into Q1. So we want to hear this feedback, see what you're looking at, what you're running into, what the needs are for our partners out there to begin these conversations. Because the reality is, yes, we can still sell connectivity. Yes, we can still sell UCaaS and CCaaS, but the customer base is becoming more and more and more cloud centric, and their needs are getting more in the cloud because they're just being pushed that way by their software as a service
That's
companies,
right.
by
Yep.
every application that they're utilizing, by the fragmentation of the workforce, meaning that, their employees may be scattered across the country like a Telarus model, where we really don't have offices that we go to anymore. We all work out of our homes or remote offices occasionally. That type of model pushes everything continually more and more into the cloud. So we want to continue this discussion. You will absolutely see more of Mike and myself and several others as we bring in key suppliers that we have, and all the rest of that into these conversations. But we're looking forward to the next few months here. And I really appreciate your insights today, Mike, and I want to thank everybody for joining us in this fireside chat. We've got a great supplier that's going to be stepping in here momentarily that Jen's going to introduce. But most importantly, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. We go into this holiday. It's my favorite holiday of the year, bar none, because everybody just comes together, enjoys a great meal, walks away, watches some football, and it's just a relaxing, typically 4-day weekend. So, thank you for joining us today, Mike. You want to have any parting words here to the group?
No, just reach out early and often with me. I'm here to help. My job day in and day out with Telarus is to help the folks that are on this call. Let me know if you want me to help you build a strategy, how you can open some doors with your current clients. I am here. Please use me.
Yep. Thank you. Jen, back to you and see who we have here joining us with the supplier today.
I will get to that in 2 seconds, but if you guys have patience for it, there were a couple of like spirit of questions that
Yeah.
kept getting asked through the chat that I think it would be nice to sort of take it really back to basics. I'm so excited now, Chad, for the Q1 data center focus because there's clearly a tremendous amount of interest in this area and a lot of opportunity. So thanks for
Yep.
all that conversation that you guys had. There were a lot of questions that were about key persona and sort of ICP, like what's the ideal customer profile. So I think as we're wrapping up this conversation, just to take it back to basics, Mike, if you were going to ask that question, which is, hey, what's your data center strategy and how's that working for you? Who are the people in a company that you're speaking to? Let's talk about mid-enterprise. And then like, what are their titles? And then also, are there specific verticals or areas where you would focus if there was an advisor who was going to go out and try these conversations for the first time?
Yeah, larger enterprise will always have a dedicated team, and they'll most likely have a VP of infrastructure that manages all of that. But if you go in SMB, it's going to be the director of IT that is working to manage the maybe some cloud deployment, maybe some on-prem deployment, maybe a little bit of colo. But I think that mid-tier company is going to have that director of IT that is in charge of all of the decision-making process. And the way that they get things done is they're doing a ton of research to qualify the locations, to qualify the platforms. So if we're able to walk in and take that off their plate, I call it the heavy lifting. We'll come in and do all that heavy lifting for you. On our next phone call, I'm going to give you 3 options so that you can see who's out there, what the technology looks like, what the price point is at, and allow you to make an informed buying decision. They can take that information verbatim and go to their stakeholders and say, this is the research that's been completed. This is why we need to move into X, Y, or Z facility. And they look like a shining star because usually in that space, they don't have 10 people in the IT
Right.
department. They've got Bob and maybe 2 other people that are juniors, and that's it. And if we can make Bob look good, then he's going to recommend you to others in his space. He's gonna become very loyal, and then he's gonna call you up and ask you questions that has nothing to do with data center. They're gonna start asking you the other IT questions. This just came across my desk. What are people doing to satisfy that? Is there new technology coming out? They just can't keep up. So if we can inform them and we can make them look great to their leadership, man, that's an easy sell.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Chad, there are also tons of suggestions in there like, hey, can you make me an FAQ that says this? Can you, I think we should comb through these chat after the session because it'll help us create toolkits for folks for Q1.
Yeah, I agree. I think we take all of that seriously, and so all of the comments in and around that, including an overview of what's happening for like each of our suppliers and what they specialize in and how they focus on that. I think it's one of those things that is really key to helping open those doors. And again, additional information to those questions that Mike outlined. So we will absolutely be providing all of that, and we appreciate the feedback.
Thank you guys both so much for being here on Thanksgiving week, and thanks for the great session. Everybody was very engaged and had tons of questions, so it was good stuff. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
got it, Jen. Thank you.
Take care.